So, did you read that story I sent you last night? My friend asked as we sat in our 9th grade history class. Which one? I laughed. I think you sent me at least 3 or 4. Any of them. All of them. He smiled at me. He was an interesting friend, always obsessed with slightly strange things. He would often go into a binge where he would read all of a topic and want to share it with anyone who would listen. I happened to be his latest victim. And this month's topic? Ghost stories. Really scary stuff, isn't it? He asked, his eyes lighting up. Did you read the one about the man who held his eyes in his hands, cursed to walk the earth looking for the man who cut them out? Yeah, I did. Really gross. I shuddered. A bandit had cut the man's eyes from his head and left him to wander in the fields as he stole all of his possessions. The perfect story you want to read right before you go to bed. Can you believe that it's based on a true story? He exclaimed, eyes growing wide. All these stories are, and they are old, really old. That's how we know about them today. I don't know about that. Maybe it's just a story to keep kids from staying up past curfew. I laughed and smiled at him. Or staying up late reading scary stories. He suddenly looked very stern. No, these are serious. There was an awkward pause for a moment as our teacher walked past us. Did you read the one about the red cape? I shook my head. One story was enough to keep me awake for most of the night. Oh, it's a good one, he said, eyes lighting up again. Apparently in Japan, like 20 years ago, all these boys and girls were too scared to go into the bathrooms at school. The legend goes that they would sit in the stall and hear a voice next to them. It would ask, red cape or blue? If they said red, suddenly they would be slashed across the back of the neck until their back was covered in blood like a cape. If they said blue, they would be lifted up off the ground and strangled. I suddenly felt sick. What if they said nothing? I asked. He smiled. Oh, then some hands would appear from the ground and drag you to hell. There's no escape. Well, good thing it's just a story. He looked at me again, hard. This isn't a story. People believe this. Kids wouldn't go to the bathroom at school. I found a link to a story about a policewoman who was called to a school where a kid said that he heard a voice in the bathroom. The woman went in the bathroom and answered the voice, asking for a red cape. Everyone outside heard her scream, and they found her dead, sliced in the back. You know it's fake, man. It's so easy to make up a newspaper on the internet these days, I quickly answered, not able to shake the sudden chill an image conjured in my mind. I thought you might say that, he replied, suddenly looking very serious again. Anyway, all these stories have given me inspiration for my own. Do you want to read it? He asked. I smiled, imagining a story about some spooky ghosts in a graveyard, or some combination of all the stories I had read so far. Sure, man. Sounds cool. Okay, sweet. But look, this isn't just any old story. You have to have the right environment for it. It needs to be dark, to create atmosphere. A little weird, I thought, but I wanted to humor him. Plus, this would be a great favor call in the future. Yeah, I get it. So what were you thinking? How about we use the guy's bathroom, like that red cape story? Ha, very funny. I can see you were already trying to get me in the scared mood. I smiled at him. Let's do it. We waited until just after the lunch bell, when everyone went to class. We both had gym right after lunch, and our teacher wouldn't know we were late because we had 15 minutes to change before the class started. I followed him to the bathroom, and he opened his backpack. Okay, here it is, he said, handing me a short stack of white paper with a blank cover page. I reached out and took it from him. What's it called? Pray, he replied. I smiled as I turned the cover page. Ooh, sounds scary. He said nothing as I looked down at the written words. Scary stories, urban legends, myths. They exist across all cultures. Some are as old as people, some are even older. This is one of those stories. Once upon a time, when man was still very new on this earth, he encountered a monster. Monster is the only way to describe this being. It lived in the darkness. It flowed just beyond eyesight and hid in the shadows. Night was its favorite time. It would emerge when the sun set and devour any human not within the light. You might be wondering, why humans? Why not animals that live in the darkness? That's because animals can't feel fear. Terror or panic, yes, but only human beings are capable of the prolonged sensation of an unanticipated predator, something just beyond vision or comprehension, lurking, waiting. I felt my heart begin to pound. I could feel each pump in my skull. My mouth suddenly felt dry. My friend saw me pause. "Go on," he smiled. "It gets better." That's where our being moves from reality to myth. As people began to build fire and harness the light, bending it to their own whims, they began to fear the unknown less and less. At least, that's what everyone believes. No, instead the creature moved. Not into the deeper dark of some cave, but instead, inside each one of us. It began to live off its prey. Instead of predator, it became parasite. Always there, waiting for the best opportunity to feast, it became intimate with each of its victims, learning, watching, waiting. When darkness falls, the creature is in its prime. Darkness is, after all, what it knows best, but it knows its host even better. The dancing shadows just beyond its victim's eyes suddenly don't look like shadows, but instead take on more sinister forms. We came to call this being fear, but it has another name, its first name, its true name. There, on the page, was suddenly writing I couldn't understand. But as my eyes glanced over the final symbol, I felt my head begin to throb, the pain nearly blurring my vision. You might be wondering why I'm telling you this story, or even how I know it. That's because fear is tired of being a parasite. It longs for the days it used to know. I felt its whisper at the back of my mind over the past few weeks as I read older and older stories from across time, different people's interpretations of what lay in the darkness. I thought the itching at the back of my mind was my own terror growing inside of me. I was right, and it spoke to me, gave me my mission. I am to be its chosen one, its harbinger. Even now as you read this, fear is growing inside of you, awakened by its own call, unleashed by its true name. As I finished reading the last few lines, my heart suddenly felt as if it would burst from my chest. My breath came in short gasps. Tightness compressed my chest. Suddenly, I could hear breathing, deep and loud. I realized it wasn't my own. Just as I felt something burst from my head, I noticed my friend flick his finger over the light switch. The last thing I saw were the final lines on the page. And you are its prey.